Hey there, woman beings. Just a quick announcement before the start of our episode. This holiday season, we are launching our very first charitable initiative, which is something we've actually been dreaming about for a long time. We've talked about the opportunity to give and empower and make the world a better place since before actually the conception of this podcast even existed. So this is super exciting that we have the opportunity to do this. Kellyanne is going to tell you all about it.
Yes, so we are partnering with a company called Ruby Cup, which is an incredible company that was founded in 2012. And they are the very first menstrual cup company to have a built-in buy one, gift one program. So no matter what you buy from them, you are always donating a menstrual cup to a woman in period poverty or in need in an impoverished nation or something of that sort, which is amazing because Ruby Cup's mission is to end period poverty. So we're very excited to partner with them.
Yes, that mission is also our mission. We love the way that Ruby Cup is trying to empower women. If you don't know, women in period poverty means that they wind up missing out on things like an education or getting to have a real steady job or all sorts of things because they don't have a way to manage their period. And that is a silly obstacle, we think. So we are partnering with Ruby Cup to match every donation that is made through our affiliate link until the end of the year up to $2,500. And so that means that by the end of the year, we will have donated, along with you, up to $5,000 worth of menstrual products, which is just incredible. That means that around 300 women will gain access to menstrual cup who didn't have access before. And that's going to change women's lives. And we are going to have links for that in our bios, in our stories, in our everywhere. You can find it to partner with us. You can either buy yourself a menstrual cup or buy a menstrual cup for someone you love. And your menstrual cup purchase will give an automatic donation from Ruby Cup and then also an automatic donation from us if you're using our affiliate link. If you do not menstruate or have no need for a menstrual cup, then you can also just donate a cup and not purchase one. And that will still be a match donation on our end. So you donating one cup is like donating 2 cups because we are giving all the cups away.
It's a lot of menstrual cups. And then final thing to just make sure you guys understand is that we're making absolutely no money from this. This is 100% going to support women in need. So with that being said, happy donating, happy menstruating, and happy holidays.
And we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello there, woman beings, and welcome to another episode of the Woman Being Podcast. I'm Emma, here today, once again, as always, with the lovely Kellyanne and Kelly, and today we have a special guest, Hannah Kelch, and she is going to talk to us about a story of something that happened with her family in the past year, and we also want to go ahead, before we start out the episode, before we say anything else, is to put out a standing trigger warning about this episode. We're going to talk about grief and loss. And we know that can trigger a lot of things for people. So we want to just put that out there and let you know that that's what we're going to be talking about this episode. And also that if that's something that you feel like you can't really listen to right now, feel free to skip on to another episode. We have lots of other content for you that you can listen to. And speaking of content, I'll also put out there that if you want to look at what we have going on Woman Being, you can go to our Instagram at Woman Being Podcast and also to our website, womanbeingcommunity.com, or find us on YouTube or any of the podcast apps. We are all over the place. We love to hear from you guys and hear what kind of things you want to hear from us. So we're really excited and feel really honored to dive into this topic with Hannah today. So let's dive right in. This is Woman Being,
where we explore thoughts and opinions
and have the freedom to change our minds.
Without expectation or judgment,
we will hold a safe space and support each other
as we navigate together in the form of feminine.
Hannah, hello. Hi. Thank you for being here today.
Seriously, so glad to have you.
Yes, welcome.
You guys so much.
So we have you on here today because we got connected with you because you're really passionate about sharing your story of miscarrying and of losing a pregnancy and a child. So I guess we'll start out with Hannah. Could you just give us a brief synopsis of sort of what happened?
Absolutely. So I am so honored to share my story and open up about what it was I experienced with my family, but I myself have found a specific longing and outlet to be able to connect with other women who maybe have gone through some of the situations that I faced. And so starting with that was actually, I got a glimpse of what it was like to experience being infertile. And I never got I never went to a doctor's appointment and had it be something that had come up. But my husband and I tried for 9 months in the year of 2020 to conceive. And that time span was very difficult. Difficult doesn't even seem like the right word to use because it was every month having started my period, it felt like not only were my hopes dying of having that positive pregnancy test, but it was just that disappointment over and over and over and over again. And then I started to get confused. Like, is something wrong with me? Our first child, who's 3 years old, his name is Cannon. He's the best thing that's ever happened in my life. He was a surprise. So when we found out we were pregnant with him, we were like, oh, we didn't even try. So after a 9-month period of trying to get pregnant and not getting pregnant.
Yeah, it's like totally unexpected.
Completely unexpected. Really knocked me down in many ways. I mean, many, many ways. And so we found out we were pregnant in December 2020, and it was the season that we had actually decided we are going to take a break for the holidays because it was so agonizing every month not to have that dream. And I was really excited to be able to give Cannon a sibling. And I just remember thinking that Christmas, I thought I would already have had a child by the time we were starting to get pregnant earlier that year because it was a 9-month period. And so I just remember facing so many confusing things, but at the same time I was balancing that trust of I really am going to be okay, but I don't feel okay right now. It was just utter agony. So anyone who has experienced, if you are listening to this and you've experienced any kind of fertility issues or having to wait for that positive pregnancy test, my heart goes out to you. I pray constantly for moms on a daily basis who have that desire and that longing to grow their family, and they're having difficulties doing that. It's very difficult, and I am so sorry that you have to be going through that. So carrying on, we found out we were pregnant. It was amazing and a surprise, and we called it our Christmas miracle. So we got to tell all of our family during Christmas that we were expecting, and only a handful of them really knew that we had been trying because every month I just thought, oh, it'll be next month. There's no need to make a big deal of it. Right. And then every month got worse. So once we found out we were pregnant, it was the biggest sigh of relief. I mean, I literally felt like I was on cloud 9 and in heaven. And it was really amazing because that month of December, I actually tangibly felt God in ways that I had never experienced before. I had some beautiful dreams that I was just like, wow, I'm literally going to sleep and waking up feeling like all of the disappointment that I had experienced that year in that 9-month period was just like vanishing from my being. And it was miraculous. And so January was awesome. February was awesome. The 23rd of February, I had one of my favorite doctor's appointments ever. It was the last time I heard my little boy. At that point in time, we knew he was a boy, and his name was Leo Jackson. And so we had an appointment scheduled. It was actually my first appointment going to it, knowing he was a boy, knowing it was his name, and all of this. And so it was really special. And I just remember laying there on the hospital bed, and there was no ultrasound. It was just a little heart reader that they put on your tummy. And I heard his heartbeat loud and clear. And, little did I know that was going to be the last time I would ever hear his heartbeat again. And that was very, very difficult. I had no idea February 23rd was going to be such a monumental moment for me as a mother. I left that appointment and a couple weeks pass, and March 3rd of 2021, I started spotting the day before, but it was like the tiniest little bit, not even like penny size. And I really wanted to hit on that because it's like, I didn't even understand that I was having a miscarriage. You could not have convinced me because it was not what the movies portray it to be. It was, I mean, I know every miscarriage is different. They reassured me of that, but I was just like, no way. I was in disbelief because I went to the doctor just to make sure after bleeding one morning and then the next morning I did it again. And, you know, it was so minimal. And I went to the doctor, and sure enough, Leo's heartbeat was gone. And he was just the sweetest little baby on a screen with no movement, no kicks, 15 weeks. And, you know, you could see his legs and his arms and his sweet little head and body. And you know, that was the very week in my pregnancy with my firstborn. That was the week that he first started kicking, and I could feel him. And I remember telling my mama, like, I cannot wait to feel Leo kick on week 15. Like, I'm just hoping that it's the same that I felt Cannon's. And here I am, the exact opposite situation, sitting on that bed, and he's dead. And a week later, we had prayed throughout that week. We had a couple other ultrasounds, and we were really hoping that all of our other ultrasounds might prove differently what that first one was. Like, we were hoping, like, we want to see this baby's heartbeat again. We want to feel these kicks. And so we were really believing for a miracle. And there was just this faith in me that had built up that December. I was mentioning to you guys that I just had this, like, refreshing of life come over me in December that I was just like, I was just really pouring myself into that, like, this baby's got to live. And so, and I wanted him so bad. It wasn't even like, I'm just happy he's here. It was like, I fought for him for 9 months. Like that, it was just everything all. So we took a week, and we were going to the doctor off and on. My doctor is incredible. And we ended up being home. We were home the whole time. We had about a week. You know, we didn't know how long it was going to be until he was naturally going to be born. You know, as we continued to go to the doctor, there was no progress on his heart beating, but I remember we got back our tests, my blood test they had taken a couple weeks prior, and there was nothing negative about the blood test. Like, everything was clear. There was, like, no Down syndrome. There was no, all the things that they can test for you and your baby. So, you know, we had a lot of unanswered questions still to this day that we're not quite sure what the reason was of his heart having stopped. But it was a Tuesday evening after a big old lightning storm, and I was sitting on the couch with my husband, and all of a sudden something happened, and I quickly, like, rolled off of the couch onto the ground because I wasn't quite sure what was happening, and it was my water having broke. And I never had my water break with Cannon, my oldest, so I didn't really, I mean, they broke my water for me, but this was totally different situation. Yeah. So my water broke, and I, you know, was soaking wet, and it literally feels like a balloon had just, like, popped. And I looked at my husband, and I, you know, said, can you please call my sister? And she's a doula, and we had kind of a protocol of what it would look like if I started losing Leo and bleeding. I was hardly bleeding at this point. Like, it wasn't even like a period. It wasn't extreme. And so, you know, there's so much information that I'm skipping over, but basically, my water broke, and 20 minutes later, Leo was born. And he was perfect size, could fit in my hand. He had the best little legs. They were just like his dad's, and he had my feet. And he had Drake's shoulders, my husband. And everything was developed on him, even at 15 weeks old, except for his left ear. And he was gorgeous and, like, the tangibleness of love. And I hated and loved meeting him all at the same time because it wasn't how I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that moment. I had my sister there with me, and, it was really special that I got to have him there in my shower. And, I bled and lost about 3 liters of blood. Our bodies hold 5 liters. And so things went south really quickly, even though we were advised that we could hold off and go to the hospital until my placenta, it wasn't delivering. And so we called the hospital. We were in touch with 911. We were in touch with my with the on-call doctor at the hospital. And so if you've experienced a situation like this, I was trying not to be naive, and I was trying not to just do what I wanted by just staying home. I really wanted that moment with Leo without doctors or needles or wristbands. I'm like, the doctor hospital feel. I didn't want that. I wanted it to be a sanctuary. And so that's what I got. And I'm so grateful for that. I mean, people made that happen, but it was because I communicated, this is what matters to me and this is what I want. So that's very important to have as a mother. Even though people have their opinions and their recommendations, you do too. And so, the doctor advised us, come in the morning and we'll take care of your placenta, and it's called a DNC, and they do a surgery, and they take everything out that could be of harm to you or cause infection and stuff. And so, a couple hours later, everything went downhill really quickly, and I was unable to stay conscious. And then the ambulance came. They got me to the hospital, had a very intense time at the ER, and then from there went on to my surgery. And then a little while later, they put 3 liters of blood back in me, and I was home the next day without my baby, with 3 liters of someone else's or other people's blood in me, and my life was shattered. And that's when I really started facing what life looked like after having a miscarriage.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for just sharing your story right here. I think that, like you mentioned, there's so many things that you didn't even realize were part of what a miscarriage looks like.
Yeah.
Or how to know what to even do in those situations.
Exactly.
I think that a lot of people, I think that people just sort of either choose to not think about what those options look like.
Yeah.
Because
That's a great point.
It's a scary topic or
Absolutely.
a taboo topic.
Yeah.
Or it's almost like if you think about it too much, then it's going to happen
Totally.
or something like that.
No, I hear you.
And
That's so good.
But I think it's really important to be aware of what the possibilities are. If you're pregnant, that is a risky thing to do. Historically, so many women have even just died from childbirth or from being pregnant, and it's only recent that pregnancy has become so much safer in the way that it is. And so it's still a very risky, what would you even call it? State of being, state of
Endeavor.
Functioning. Yeah, endeavor, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But thank you so much for sharing, letting us into some of that vulnerability and that story. I think it's super valuable.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you're going to go more into this too, but you're in this grieving process and feeling shattered, as you said. And I feel like, especially with miscarriage and with, the death of a loved one, people often don't know what to do. You sort of want to kind of support, but you're afraid of being in it too much. And, there's a lot of insecurity, I think, with loving someone who's going through a grieving process. And so in what ways did you find amazing support throughout your process? And in what ways did you end up feeling more alone?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that was most powerful to me was when people were not afraid to grieve with me. And I mean, I could count on one hand the amount of people that truly wept with me. I mean, like, couldn't speak, wept with me. And that not only validated what I was feeling so deeply and so crippling, but it also validated their love for Leo, that I wasn't the only one that loved him and was excited about his life with us. And so that was so helpful to have that, but it's rare to find people that are willing to move past the fear of grieving and actually grieve with you. It's rare. So when it happened, I just soaked it up as much as I could. And so that was precious. But this is another thing that really I had to learn to receive from this, because at first it was like, oh, this is a nice gesture. But it was bigger than that, and that is gifts. We were given some gifts after our loss. And actually, we even received a bouquet of flowers the day after we found out that Leo's heart had stopped. I remember opening the door, and I was still in utter shock. Like, I was not like able to accept that my baby was dead in my womb right there and then. And so I opened the door, and there's a bouquet of flowers being handed to me. And I so badly wanted to just say, no, thank you. I don't want these flowers. Like, because I did not want to accept the reality of my world in that moment. I was still in shock.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you, I have like a whole poem I'll write someday about empty vases, because I had a million of empty vases, and that's all they ended up being eventually. And it was so, like, I just wanted to break every single one of them. I did not, though. I did not break them, and I have them, and they remind me of Leo, and I still fill them with life. And I just remember, like, even though where it feels empty, you can still fill it with life. So flowers were beautiful, but I loved things like candles and cards. When people anyone who lost someone that wrote us, like, what they wrote, I remember reading and like holding on to it, like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm not alone, and this is real, and this is okay that I'm feeling these things. And so we would receive gifts of all forms. I mean, necklaces and you know, I just, like, Cannon got ice cream and a bucket of treats and some t-shirts. And I just remember, like, you name it, there was things that came into our life, and it wasn't about the thing necessarily that was like, but in 5 months, when that person hasn't messaged me in 3 months, I look at that candle and I think, they love me. And this was their act of saying, we will not forget what you have been through. Even though they're not reminding me of that on a daily, weekly basis, as much as I'm absorbed in my grief, they may not be, but their act of giving me a tangible gift reminded me. And it took me a lot of effort to remember, like, oh, this necklace was from my sister on Mother's Day. And you know, it's going to remind me every time I look at it that there is people that care, because you feel so alone. You're not quite sure who cares, or who cares as much as you do, or if they ever will, or, you know. And so gifts was huge. And then hitting on what was difficult and where I had loneliness. I'll hit on specifically 2 things that really made me feel isolated and alone in facing my grief, or walking with grief, experiencing grief. And that was when those I loved and those that I knew loved Leo had a difficult time, like, hearing where I was at and what I was thinking. I can only imagine it was difficult enough for them to experience our situation. I mean, what my family as a whole went through was so difficult, but friends and family and other connections, like, there was so many people that I felt it was difficult for them to hear any more of my story after the point of Leo having been born and then us having buried him. It was difficult when they wouldn't bring him up. It was so difficult for months. That was what made me feel most alone. And it wasn't necessarily like I needed them to hear every detail of every thought and why I figured out I missed this or what this meant to me. It was like not talking about him was so many different things. It was like denial that he was ever in our life. And it was like expectation that they wanted me healed and they wanted me well and they didn't want me grieving anymore. And of course, I didn't want to be grieving, but I was, because he mattered to me and he was my baby and I loved him and I was so excited to have him in my life. And I wanted him to be watching me die, and I didn't want to be watching him die, when I was 90. Not right now. So when people wouldn't bring him up, that was very difficult.
Yeah.
I had that time after time.
Yeah, we definitely as a culture have a fear, I think, of, I don't know what the fear is. Maybe it's like stepping over the line or saying too much or saying the wrong thing or whatever. And so sort of just like people don't necessarily try to engage because they're not really sure how. And I can understand how that would feel so isolating and painful.
You mentioned that people wanted you to just like be better, and I think that especially one trend that I see in like the church, like the Christian church, is that you should be like the joyful Christian all the time, like you should be just happy. You have the joy of the Lord. So of course, like that is your strength. And so you can just like carry on. But I think that cancels out people's process, and that cancels out people grieving or being able to feel a range of emotions. And like we're given a range of emotions for a reason, right? So
Exactly.
I think that's one thing that I've seen a lot of churches do poorly, is like not being able to reconcile with like the grieving Christian, as like it has to just be the happy Christian, which I don't know if you experienced that or what, but that's what comes to mind for me. That is like the idea of like, oh, you just need to be better because like that's what we do. Hold it together.
Declare it and let it be.
Yeah.
But there's a reason we need a comforter, for sure.
Yeah.
And you said that exactly. So I actually had a moment in my grief that really introduced me to, being a Christian. What we're doing here is just learning how to be like Christ. Like he's all we should be focused on being like. Like we don't need to be like you. We don't need to be like you. We can like literally glean from the Christ that he is in you. But one thing that I had never seen before that I got to see in my grief was Jesus grieve with me. And I actually wrote about this, and I hope that it gets to more ears and even just beyond here, because it was something that changed my whole perspective. I was really having a hard time like connecting with Jesus after we had buried our son. I found it easier to connect with God because he knew what it was like to lose a son. And I was just like, you and I can be buds. Let's walk through this. And then Jesus was like, hey, don't forget about me. And so I did not forget about him. And I went to him and I'm like, I'm sorry, let's work this out. And it was weeks later. I was in my backyard and I was cleaning up, and I cannot even, there's no words to describe how grief takes over your body. All I can say is I was so in pain that I was numb. Like I was barely functioning at a rate to keep up with my beautiful little 3-year-old boy. And I remember cleaning up toys in the beautiful shade of our backyard. And I was under a tree and I was just standing up from picking up a toy. And in kind of like my imagination, all of a sudden I could see like Jesus there in the backyard with me. And I looked over and he never had looked this way to me before. And like, it wasn't that he was trying to just comfort me. Like you made an amazing point. He is our comforter, but he isn't and he's our healer. He's our comforter and he's our healer. But this was like so beautiful. I never experienced it in this form before. And I looked up and I saw he was like in my world of grief with me. And I could tangibly see it over his whole body. And I looked at his face and he was like just as broken and numb as I was. And he was weeping, and he didn't even care that I was there. And he didn't even care that Cannon was there. He was just like, I could tell he was just processing what I was processing. And I remember thinking, like, oh my God, like, you're here and you're feeling it, and I am not alone. And that's like, that moment just, it absolutely set the tone for how I was able to receive healing, because Isaiah am weeping with me. And they say, like, Jesus wept. And I think that in those moments where he weeps, he is going beyond what even us as like humans can like do. Like he was weeping with me in a way that no other human like wept with me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm expecting him to come and fix me. But he's like here, just like, I'm feeling this numbness. I'm tangibly like missing Leo with you. And I'm like, how's that possible? Like he's in heaven. But he was connected to all forms of Leo, and he was connected to me. And that set the tone for how I viewed him as the healer and as the comforter, and how I hope that us as Christians can actually, like, if we can do that, we are going to change how we deal with grief and death for everyone around us. If we can literally have that face that I saw of Jesus. So it's my goal in my life to be able to weep like that with those that are weeping, and to be there with the mourning. And anyways, that was something that really helped me be able to get vision for what needs to change with grief and how we deal with it as a Christian community.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to learn how to cry. That's not an easy mandate.
Yeah.
But I think like super important in like, let's grieve together. Let's cry together, And you mentioned like your son Cannon, and kind of, you're still a mom, right? Like you still have a young person that you're caring for and feeding and keeping alive and all those things, but also going through this like super painful experience. How did you kind of manage motherhood and grief together, and like maybe the guilt of trying to raise someone but needing to like take care of yourself, and like what was that like for you?
It was very challenging to ask for help, because I really just wanted to be like, everything to Gannon. I was like, buddy, we got this. But it was difficult to ask for help. And so I learned how to do that through lots of trial and error. I was like, oh yeah, I need to ask for people to come in. And for instance, even as grandparents, like I was like, hey, Gannon just needs a little extra love. Like, and they were willing when I was able to communicate. And I just remember juggling that, like seeing like, oh, like there's so many people out there to love him. And so knowing that I wasn't the only one there to love Cannon helps bring me comfort, because then I could figure out my love for Leo. I think the most important thing that helped me stay authentic with Cannon was to let him in on moments where I was happy or I was sad. Lots of sad moments happen. So let's hit on those for a minute. Like I remember on Easter, I was sitting in our bedroom and I was watching a video that I recorded of my brother from like years ago. And he was singing this song, and it was like describing like some of what I would wish and experience from grieving like our loss of Leo. And I remember, you were even mentioning like we need to learn how to cry. And I'm like, our whole lives, we're just like trying to survive and thrive. We forget to break sometimes. And I heard this amazing quote say, let your heart break so your spirit doesn't. And I'm like, yeah, like if we could just let our hearts break with one another, I think our spirits would be a lot stronger together as a whole. And so Cannon's spirit, I think it's a lot stronger because I let him in on my heartbreaking. I wasn't afraid of him to see my heartbreaking. And I think it confirmed even more so how much I loved him, because if I love Leo that much and I only knew him for a short time, then he must be like, oh, she must really love me if she's crying this much for missing Leo. But really, when I say crying, when you're really grieving someone you've lost, it isn't actual tears. It's this, like, I remember making noises that I've never made in my whole entire life. Like, I wasn't tangibly crying water down my eyes, like out of my eyes, down my face. It was like sounds would come from me and I would lose my breath. Like, that is literally how hard it hits you. And I remember sitting there and I looked at him, and I remember as I could gain words, I just told him, I miss Leo, buddy. And he wasn't like, I remember always looking at his face and like, okay, the moment that he looks terrified, I'm going to stop. Like, I will calm myself down. And not once did he seem to disconnect or stand there in confusion or fear. And I think children are just so much more beautiful at valuing life. Literally, it was valuing life. Like, we were valuing what Leo's life brought to us. And I was valuing him in that moment. And so I didn't really feel guilt about one thing in particular about how Canon and I's relationship was. It was more the fact of, am I taking care of myself and asking for help? Because if I'm not, then I'm not able to be 100% for him. So I think, if anything, that's where I felt guilt, is like, if I knew I wasn't taking care of myself, or like if I was really holding out when I really needed like help, and I was like wearing myself really thin. I mean, being worn thin with like chores or whatever, like that's like so tiny in comparison to grief, but eventually like you just start crumbling and you're like, oh. And so if I noticed that, I'd be like, dang it. Okay, I need to ask for help. And so I'd have to get courage to just tell someone, I don't have it all together. And no, I'm not healed yet. And yes, I still miss Leo. Can you come help me? And so I remember having moments with Canon and just explaining to him throughout my postpartum process, because I had milk come in, and I had really jumped into like postpartum. I lost hair, same thing I did with Canon. I mean, it was very similar, and it actually took a lot longer for me to heal this time around than it did even with Canon. And I was nursing Canon, he was huge, and Leo was so tiny in comparison to Canon, but this was just way, way more traumatic. And so one of the things that I made sure to is like, I just always looked at Canon, and I tried to unpack what was happening in a moment. So I'm a stay-at-home mom with Canon. He's my world right now, and I hope to add more to that world as time goes on. But there's times where he'd be in the bathroom with me, and I would need to use the restroom, and I'd have to change my pad because I was still bleeding after, even after D&C. And so whenever that would happen, and if I caught him having a glance at what was going on, I would tell him, these are Band-Aids. Why? Because they look like a Band-Aid. They look like a Band-Aid.
Absolutely.
And he knows what Band-Aids are, and Band-Aids are there to help you heal. And that is what that is doing. So I tell him, these are Band-Aids, and, it's helping me heal. Like, mommy, as much as I wanted to heal in every way possible, healing took time. And if anyone pushed it, I'd immediately just be like, you just like made it more impossible for me to heal. It was very difficult. And so Canon, I really felt like I got to learn about my moments. I didn't ignore my moments as much of like, oh, I'm just nonchalantly changing my pad. I actually got to look at him and tell him like, hey, like, I'm unpacking this for you so you understand that what is happening. And it brought me even more into my moments of I was numbing myself out because I was trying to bring him into a place of processing as well. So Canon was extremely connected and bonded to Leo during our pregnancy, even in just the 4 months that we had him with us. And I was amazed because as we continued our journey through grief, we still have things that connect Canon to Leo. Strawberry milk was one of my cravings during the pregnancy. So every time we have strawberry milk, we talk about Leo. And Canon has a little stuffed animal lion that his uncle got him that connects him to Leo. And we don't ignore that we lost Leo. And we talk about it, and we have tangible things in our home that represent for Canon a connection to Leo.
I love that you brought your son into that and that you invited him in. I mean, I feel like you two are going to have such a strong connection to each other, but then also to Leo for years and years to come, because you went through that together. Thank you. That's really special.
Yeah.
But like switching gears just like a little bit of like a lot of women kind of walk into miscarriage or experience miscarriage pretty unprepared, which is, it's really hard, especially when you don't, it's not something you've talked about previously and it's happening now. And it's just not often talked about or fully prepared. And I'm curious to know, like, in what ways do you wish you had been more prepared, or could you have been?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing that I really dove into that helped me was physical signs and like understanding what meant what. After getting the news that our little guy's heart had stopped beating, there was just things that were happening that left me in confusion. Why? Because even the people in my life that had had miscarriages never told me what was happening. Like, I have people that I'm like sisterhood with, and I never heard about their miscarriage until after my miscarriage. And I'm like, oh, like, I understand that it's something sometimes some people need to privately protect that because it is intimate. But I'm hoping to add a new support to this world of how we can be intimate together in facing these things. Because really, the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And like, we have the ability to really make life like abundant, and even experiencing the loss that I did, I felt like the information had nothing to do with it, but it helped me just have this staying in tune with my body, with my womanhood, and with me, not ignoring, not being like, oh, that's nothing. So like the contractions I had with Leo as a baby were opposite of what I felt when I was having contractions with him. And I remember describing to people like, this is what I'm feeling. What is this? And they would be, those are contractions. And I'm like, okay. And yes, it was hard to swallow, but I think those things actually were really helpful to me. This is really out there as well, but it's the one thing that I was so thankful. There was a person who was highly informed and equipped to share miscarriage information. And she told me that when it came time for Leo to be born, to expect that he might not come out as one full being. At that stage, they're so fragile that they can come out in pieces. Not a single soul brought that up, even though that's common knowledge, supposedly. Yeah. I didn't know this until she told it. And then, like, I mentioned it to other people, and I'm like, hey, just so you know, like, I really don't want this to happen. Like, agree with me. Like, this will not happen if we lose Leo. Like, we're not going to see him limb by limb come out. And so, like, I got my perfect little baby in my hand, and I was just so thankful for that because she helped me realize, like, it was like I already defeated that fear by knowing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
sure.
Like, I was like, oh, okay, like, that sounds horrific to imagine, but thank you for telling me, because you telling me already made it less, like, scary. Like, most people were not saying it because,
prepared.
Most people were like, it's too scary to say. Don't tell her that. But imagine if I was in my shower and I started seeing his little arm come out of me and nothing else. Like, that would have been way worse than someone saying, just so you know, this is common. This is just common. Or it can happen. I don't even know if she used the word common. Yeah. So little bits of information like that absolutely helped. And then finding the safest people in your life who are not afraid to be partners with you in your pain. And I didn't have a big parade of people, even though a lot of people loved us and a lot of people loved Leo. I had a very small amount of people that were okay with partnering with my pain. And that could look physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And I would go and I would let it all out when I felt the buildup. And I would just say, like, you're here. I need you to partner with me. And I don't need you to, don't need you to fix this. I just need you to be here partnering with this pain. So that was something that I would encourage women to not be afraid of information. it doesn't solidify anything. If anything, it disarms fear. And then the next thing is find those few or even one person in your life who is not afraid of your pain, who you know you can tell anything to, and they're going to partner with you, whether that be your spouse or your mom or your best friend.
Yeah. That's so good. I love what you said. Information doesn't solidify anything. It disarms fear. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the old saying, knowledge is power. I mean, it's true. Like the more that you know about what's going to happen, the more prepared you are. And like you said, there's no way that you can emotionally prepare for something like that that's traumatic to happen. But like,
Exactly.
why not use those tools
Yeah.
of information that you can access to give you some sense of equipping?
Right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, in a situation like a miscarriage, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. There's all sorts of emotions involved, and there's no way to be 100% ready.
Never.
Considering that, I mean, 1 in 8 women statistically will miscarry, and despite that, it's still a taboo topic, and it's still something that people shy away from talking about. And so I'm curious to hear sort of like just what your encouragement would be to women who have miscarried, and then also to people who are around women who have miscarried in their community and their family.
Absolutely.
What are the nuggets you have for them?
Yeah, so the first question, like, there is so much I could say to this because I am still so deeply in it. Like, my grieving has not ceased, and I feel like I am learning myself in motherhood in this way constantly. And so, if I could say this to a mom who is experiencing loss, maybe similar to mine or maybe not, but if you're a mom and you don't have your child like you thought you would. I mean, even if your child is not home and you wish that they were home, maybe they ran away a couple years ago. Like, it could be any form of loss, but in motherhood, you don't have to hide your story because everyone else seems to do that. Your story matters. It is so important, and you are important, and just don't hide. And I know it's so terrifying to put yourself out there because you just hope that maybe someone will love your child as much as you. To be honest, no one will. And that's the beautiful thing about you, because I learned with Leo that the more I unpacked what he meant to me and how he meant to me, the more understanding people had. And the most helpful thing that I think ever happened to me was when people would bring him up without me initiating it. And that only happened because of all the seeds I had planted of being like, hey, this and this reminds me of Leo. You don't know how many pictures that I got of daffodils because people knew daffodils are something that represents Leo to Hannah. Now I'm thinking about them, so I'm going to send them this picture. In moments like that, I felt so overcome with love for both of us, but it helped me heal and helped me believe in the hope of healing in those moments. And so don't be afraid to step out there, because the risk, you will end up seeing some fruit come from it that it's not in your control how to receive it or what it will look like, but it will absolutely blow you away in time when you just take that time to realize this matters, I matter, my child matters. And yeah, never hide your value and never stop sharing. Even if you're a very personal person and you would never do something like this, tell the one person in your life that you know you could trust this with. And something that helped me is on the days I miss Leo the most, I would send a emoji that represented like Leo to me to my SOS team. SOS team as in like the people that were closest to me. And I said, I just send the emoji, and they just knew it was a rough moment or I was missing him. And I just needed them to say, I'm so sorry. I remember getting that message from one person in particular, my sister Glory, who was there when I gave birth to Leo. And her saying, I'm sorry, was the most, like, you think it's so simple, but no. Like, her I'm sorry's saved me. in my time of grief. She wasn't like, get over it. It's been 4 months. It was just, I am so sorry. And so there's so much to be said to someone who's in grief, but there's so much that you can say. There's so much that people don't understand that you want them to. So don't be afraid to just start to let it out and know your value no matter how other people take it. It's so scary, but you got it. You can do it. So if you want to partner with them in pain, and you're wanting to understand that, but you're not wanting to overstep, you're wanting to be cautious and sensitive. Those are all lovely things, but they're the last things that we're thinking about. There's so many things that you can do or say that could help them, but I actually have a link that you can find from these ladies below or whatnot that is actually a website that I found that actually goes through what to say and what not to say in someone who has miscarried. And those are really helpful. So I'm not going to go over those right now because you can do that on your own. But beyond just saying something to the person that is in pain that you love and care about right now, if you could just do something so brave, and that is sit there with them and not expect them to heal and just literally mourn with them. Like just anything that you can actually like connect to about their story. And you don't even have to say like, oh, I connect to this, because that's probably not going to be good. But you could be like something so simple like, when they say, I miss Leo, I just can't stop thinking about him. What is it that you miss about him? What makes you think of him? Turn those statements back around into questions. Dive into their life. Just be with your person that's in pain. Don't have expectations, and don't, not even for yourself. Don't have expectations for yourself. They're so engulfed in their pain and their loss that expectations are just not really there yet. We are all so different, and how we grieve is going to be so different. Our needs, like for me, it was helpful when my neighbor texted me and she said, I'm missing Leo today. How are you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of Leo that day. And her telling me that she thought of him was like, what? I was amazed. And so, but like another person, maybe wouldn't need that. They maybe would need someone to come and bring them dinner, or be able to, send thank you cards to people that had helped them in their time, and they just don't have the energy to. I mean, it looks different how you can support your person, but you know your person. You know these people. So like, just be there with them and you'll figure it out. Don't put a pressure to have a plan or anything like that. There's all kinds of do's and don'ts, but really you know this person, and you're going to see another side of them. And it may be hard to see for a little bit, but you'll start to see the love through it. And then as years go on, you're going to have the richest bonds that you've ever had before.
I feel like so much of it is about just being attentive.
Yeah.
And I think that we try to put like a one-size-fits-all solution onto like grief. But what we really need to do is pay attention to what that person is showing us that they need, or on what it seems that they need in that moment, and being flexible and adaptable in that, I think is what's probably going to benefit people the most. Yeah. So Hannah, all of that being said, we want to wrap up this episode with a question that we ask every single guest, and a question that we're excited to hear your answer for. So Hannah, what does the term, the phrase, woman being mean to you?
Actually, it's very simple, but when I first read it, it felt like the best way to describe what feminine partnership looks like. That like iron sharpens iron. Like woman being is, we're like being together. There's nothing more powerful than partnering with each other, being together. And I think that that's actually something that I really learned through motherhood and through our loss of Leo is through the years I had friends well before even motherhood that have partnered with me in being with me through my joys and my grief. And even in grief, I had joys and I had happy moments, but I definitely never shared anything as beautiful as being together with women who are willing to partner with life together. Yeah. So it's partnership.
That's really beautiful. I think I don't think we've ever
We never had a response like that.
before,
Yeah.
so I love that.
Yay! That makes me happy.
And that's the fun thing about the question in general is like everyone has a unique perspective about their own feminine identity or the feminine identity of women in general. And so it's very valuable. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it also would not be a Woman Being episode if we didn't ask you for any resources that you might like to share, either to help through grief and loss or education of miscarriage or anything you'd like to share.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've learned so many different outlets through the last 9 months of how to find people and resources to help me with my love for Leo, with my sadness for what we went through. And so I actually I had this amazing life coach. I had everything from that to songs that meant a lot to me. And so I wrote down the resources for you ladies to be able to share, but it all point back to something very specific, and that is I actually was able to kind of see a different light of Leo's purpose in my life. And I was afraid to see it at first because I didn't want his purpose to be anything other than my son. So it was really hard to accept this. It was actually one of the greatest moments of fear. After having buried him, I didn't feel any type of fear as strongly as I did till the moment that I got to choose, will you actually step into more purpose for Leo after Leo, with Leo, his story, or will you just stay back and just let his world just kind of stay inside of you, and that's it. And so I bravely took a tiny baby step forward, and some amazing things were able to come together that I am so amazed and proud and honored to. So I'm hoping that I can partner with families and moms, from children to grandparents, in how to receive love and light in their darkest moments of life, and that is facing death and grief. And so I was able to create a care package, and each and every item in it represents something that was a sense of resource and light to me in my darkest time I have ever experienced. So this care package is called Lighthouse Beacon, and you can find it on Instagram right now. We're still working on further access to getting it prepared to really reach so many people that face this every day. And so if there's anyone that is just looking for even the slightest resource, you're welcome to find me at Lighthouse Beacon, or email lighthousebeacon.org@gmail.com. And those are outlets that you can contact me for more information if you just really want to partner with your loved one going through grief, and love on them with gifts that represent more than just a tangible substance of love. It is actually something that they will always find a connection with you in their time of grief.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll have links to all to Lighthouse Beacon, to the website you mentioned before. You also have, I think, some books and different things that we will also link.
Lots of resources.
So be sure to check those out in the description of this video /podcast / wherever you're listening. Speaking of wherever you are listening, we would love if you guys could give us a review on whatever podcast platform you're on. And if you also could give us a follow on Instagram at Woman Being Podcast. And then we also have our website, womanbeingcommunity.com, and we have TikTok. At Woman Being Podcast. And so we have all the things. So be sure to connect to us on there. And if any of you guys felt like impacted by Hannah's story today, if you feel as though you've benefited from the story, we would love to hear from you. We would love to be able to be a resource to sit with you in your grief. So again, Hannah, thank you so much
Thank you.
for spending this time with us, for taking just a little bit of a slice of your Saturday to spend with us. We really appreciate it.
It was my honor. Really, thank you so much for having me and hearing my story.
Of course. And all that to say, that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you guys next week.